Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu salam ala Rasulullah. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's Jawahir al-Quran wa Durr, the Jews the Quran spares. In the last session, we concluded reading Surah Fatir. And while there should be something about Surah Yasin, no, Imam Al-Ghazali rahmahullah did not choose anything from Surah Yasin despite its importance. Of course, the whole Quran, every single word is important, but I'm saying that in general, there is a special status of Surah Yasin. There are there are traditions, though the the chain of narration might not be that strong about the merits of Surah Yasin. And there's a hadith that has a good chain of narrators. Abu Hurairah said that the Messenger of Allah said, من قرأ ياسين في ليلة أصبح مغفورا له ومن قرأ حاميم التي يذكر فيها الدخان أصبح مغفورا له. إسناده جيد. He who recites Yasin will read this surah in one night, he would be forgiven. He أصبح meaning like by dawn, by the morning, he would be forgiven. And the same thing applies to Hamim Dukhan. There are many prophetic tradition. A beautiful description of Surah Yasin is that it is the heart of the Quran. For everything there is a heart, and the heart of the Quran is Yasin. But it seems that there is something about the chain of narrators that only narrated by Zayd and Hamid, and there's a narration about reciting the Yasin for those who are dying. So that's a narration that Imam Ahmad mentioned. This is why some scholars said that since it will be recited for someone who is dying and that's something serious, so some scholars said that this surah, whenever it is read, when there's something difficult, challenges, except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would facilitate that issue. As if when reciting this surah for someone who's dying is so that the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the blessing, so that make it easy for him to we'll talk about the soul departing from the body, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Yes. As for the surah itself, one of the it begins really by Yasin. It could be we have spoken many times about these letters at the beginning of the many surahs. 14 letters total. So it's not all the Arabic alphabet. So Alif Lam Mim, for example, Alif Lam Ra, Kaf Ha Ya Ain Sad, and here we have Yasin. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes oath by the Quran itself, the wise Quran, which reflects basically the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes this oath that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, innaka al-mursaleen, you are amongst the messengers on a straight path, revealed. This is a revelation revealed by the Almighty, the Most Merciful. As a warner, we know this, the Prophet ﷺ is a warner, لِتُنذِرَ, so that you may warn a people whose forefathers were not warned and so are heedless. Because there was some time between Jesus Christ, peace upon him, and Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Quite some time. It's about a little bit more than 5 centuries, almost six centuries. The decree of torment has already been justified against most of them, those who reject, of course, for they will never believe. We know this, that some people will not believe, they don't want to believe. And it does speak about the since they are going to be tormented, they will have shackles around their necks up to their chin, up to their chins, so their heads are forced up, and there'll be a barrier placed between them and a barrier behind them, and من بين أيديهم has been in talking about the language. Iraqi professor of Arabic. It seems that he is the most knowledgeable, at least one of the most knowledgeable professors of Arabic. He's a bit old now, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him health. He said, من بين أيديهم, literally this barrier is pushing against their chest. So between and right behind them, so they have no room. And whether you warn them or not, they will not believe. You just warn those who follow, who are in awe, who follow the reminder from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the revelation, of course, dhikr, that's the Qur'an. In awe of the most compassionate without seeing him, believing without, of course. So give them good news of forgiveness and an honorable reward. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will resurrect the dead to saintly. We, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will resurrect the dead and write what they send forth and what they leave behind. Later on, there is mention, if I may simply jump a little bit, and it's about the those who ask the question, the story, the context is that Ubay bin Khalaf, an unbeliever, disbeliever, an arch enemy, he came to the Prophet ﷺ with in him and in his hand holding very old, worn out bones, and he was simply rubbing it, and it becomes really kind of dust in the air. It's so old. And he would ask the Prophet ﷺ, "O Muhammad, do you claim that Allah is going to resurrect this?" And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Yes, He will cause you to die, then He will resurrect you, then He will destine you, send you to fire, to hellfire." And so I'm So I moved from 12 to 78 because it's really related. And I remember it's an amazing story, really. I mean, to me, in the early 90s, a Chinese leader died and they cremated his corpse. And they took his wife and his daughter in a special, it'll be a small aeroplane over the ocean. And like there's an opening in the floor of the plane, and they spread out his ashes over the ocean. I was watching the news then. I was in Malaysia teaching at the International Islamic University in Kuala Lumpur. So the moment they did this, my reaction was one word in Arabic. Only one word. That's my reaction. لا يبعثنك. It cannot be translated into one word in English. لا يبعثنك. He will resurrect you. Think about the ashes, think about the cremation, think about the uh, the air or the wind blowing the particles of his ashes in every direction. Then ultimately, because of gravity, they hit the water, uh, and then the waves will disperse these particles in every direction, and some of these particles will end up in the bellies of fish and say tuna or sardine, and then some fishermen will get this tuna or sardines, and they end up in a factory and they end up canned and sent overseas. And yes, the can, the tuna can or the sardine in your pantry might include such a particle, despite the time, despite the. I'm just simply not saying something that is. The issue here is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will resurrect every single human being, regardless what happens to the body. Resurrection is not dependent on preserving the body in good shape. Then the it's not only the resurrection. The idea is that everything is listed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a perfect record. Then this is the example of this village that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent messengers first two, and then they were supported by reinforced, supported, strengthened by a third one, and they told the village that they were messengers. The village people rejected them, and they said, "You are only human beings like us." And Allah, God, the most compassionate, did not reveal. He hasn't revealed anything. He did not send anyone. You are simply lying. Uh, but this argument has been almost repeated by many rejectors, as if those people were expecting And the Quran does mention it expecting an angel, but even if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends an angel, the angel would take the anthropomorphic form, would look like a human being. In the books of tafsir, those who try to pinpoint which village, uh, I think there is some kind of Israeliyat. Israeliyat is the body of literature that comes from Jewish and Christian sources. It doesn't have even to be directly from the first five books of the Bible. The Pentateuch doesn't have. The idea is, it's in general, it would be a story coming from the people of the book. The names mentioned there, that those three include names like John and Paul, and mentioning that the village is Antioch. I think it doesn't make sense, and this is why the interpretation, the books of exegesis, interpretation of the Quran is ongoing. Uh, there was one attempt, I think, by Sabuni to get rid of the Israeliyat from the tafsir. Ibn Kathir, Wallah subhanahu wa ta'ala ala wa alam. So those people, that village, they were pessimistic. They did not think good about those three, and someone from the city, from the edge of town, came and he asked them to follow those messengers, and specifically saying that those messengers are not asking anything for themselves, and that he declared his belief, of course, in the one in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and God. And it seemed that the villagers, the people of that town, killed him, and this is why it says قيل ادخل الجنة. And he wished that his people would know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave him, and that Allah honored him, and ultimately the at the end of time, but also the blowing the trumpet, they will all die. But there were punishments in this life, not the end of judgment. The I spoke about this before. A very severe sound can kill. Then the surah speaks about natural phenomena, the day and the night, and that the sun is moving until it finds, um, until it's really until it stops. And the right interpretation is that this is the day of judgment. The sun moves. This is an appointed term, a decree from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And on the day of judgment, on the day of course, the end of all the natural world that we know it as is. والشمس تجري مستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. And if the sun reaches its own, that's its end. So it will be the planets, our solar system, but also all suns or stars. That's what it is. This universe will definitely change at the end of time. And the reference to the moon, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uh, made it phases. Okay. As for the moon, we have ordained precise phases for it until it ends up looking like an old curved palm stalk. From other places in the Quran, we know that as for the moon, يسألونك عن الأهلة, the crescents, the different phases. قل هي مواقيت للناس الحج. So there, it does tell people about the time of the month, time of the year. هو الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا وقدره منازل تعلموا عدد السنين والحساب. It is He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who made the sun a source of light and the moon a reflection as of this light, and He decreed phases so that you would learn to basically to know the years. لتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب. There is before that the creation of all these fruits of all, but also the dead earth coming to life with rain, with water, and grain being sprouting, if you will, all by the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Once rain hits the ground, it will be shaken, it will give all this green. Then another reference to something that a part of the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed on humanity, a sign pointing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He carried the offspring, all the offspring of all humanity at one point were within the filled, if you will, stuffed ship that's of course Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam. That's at the time of the flood. So everyone that exists today comes from that ship, the ark. Yes. Whatever they needed for after the end of the flood, those who were outside the flood, they were doomed. They were the non-believers. And that's after a long period of warning and Sayyidina calling them almost 1,000 years. 1,000 solar years minus 50 lunar years. Literally, we have two words, sana and am. There are the trumpet, when it is blown, it would cause death, but also the resurrection, and a reference to age, that whoever lives to a very old age will decline in terms of health, and we know that this is the truth. وَمَنْ نُعَمِّرْهُ نَكِسُّهُ فِي الْخَلْقِ أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ. And whoever we grant a long life, we reverse them in development. I think development is problematic. Uh, we are born weak, like as babies. Human beings are very weak. Then they reach their prime, then they grow weak again. Like if we talk about a graphic curve, it will never be the case that you continue growing. It might stabilize at one point, and then it starts basically going down. It could go down a sharp drop, it could be slower, but it has to go down. A sharp drop, a heart attack. But those who live long, then they, especially when we talk about their uh, their movement could become limited, ailments, but then their intellectual capacity. I think people are afraid. They worry about Alzheimer. And so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants a long life, they their health in general uh, suffers. Just before that, there is a reference to those who end up in hellfire, but on the day of judgment, they will not be allowed to speak, and it is their limbs that will bear witness against them. Allahu Alam how this will take place. And what I'm going to say is not really how things will take place, but since elsewhere in the Quran it is their skin also will bear witness against them. Okay. You command the limb to do whatever it did during this life, and it will bear witness against you. In general, when you talk about these computer chips and what have you, talk about silicon. But even many years ago, well, now it's been like almost a couple of decades, there was a successful downloading of information on an organic, let's call it, chip. Then I thought about the skin, that there might be information there. Still, it doesn't make much difference. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will enable the limb and the skin and what have you to bear witness. That was the end of Surah Yasin. It is about how the human being was created. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created him from a drop sperm, from, like we say today, also the zygote. Regardless, then he becomes arch enemy, arguing against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's a reference to Ubay bin Khalaf, the one that we have mentioned earlier. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will resurrect all human beings. قل يحيي الذي أنشأها أول مرة. The one who created it in the first instance will bring it to life. And he is fully uh, knowledgeable about all the creation. He's omniscient, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who created for us uh, a source of energy, fire from the green trees. And it's amazing how a seed could grow into massive trees that we use our needs. So isn't it the case that He who created He who created the heavens and the earth can resurrect these deniers? Yes, He can, for He is the Master Creator, all knowing. It is His will. All it takes when He wants something to be is simply to say to it, be, and it is. In Arabic, it is إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون. Kun, be. And in Arabic, they say that the divine command is between the kaf and the noon of kun. We have two letters only, a short vowel after the kaf. So you can write it in English as a transliteration Kun, but the consonants, it's the K and the N, the noon. And just to bring it closer to home, in English we like it's a bit, because it is B as a command, it is really between the B and the E, like it's really practically in no time. سبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. So glory be to the one in whose hands is the authority over all things, and to whom alone you will all be returned. I hope that this at least provided some insight about the Surah Yasin. Again, Imam Ghazali did not choose anything from the surah in terms of Jews or pairs. In the next session, inshallah, we will deal with Surah Safat, of which Imam Ghazali chose 8 verses. Until then, subhanakallah wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.